media. Well, on Monday morning at 9 o'clock, a 48-hour voluntary boycott of Twitter was begun by some of its users, many very high-profile political and celebrity accounts, protesting at Twitter's lack of action on tackling anti-Semitism, in particular with the tweets of grime music artist Wiley, who shared a series of posts on Twitter on Friday. Some of the posts were later deleted, but Twitter was criticised for taking a very, very long time to act and leaving some of those tweets up and refusing to permanently suspend or block the account. Well, let's talk about this with Karen Pollock, who's Chief Executive of the Holocaust Educational Trust. Good morning to you, Karen.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Now, I have to say, I've been speaking out, as you know, on the issue of anti-Semitism. Again, it's just racism. Let's call it what it is. For a long period of time, but I've decided not to take part in the Twitter boycott. And I think actually the explanation by Patrick O'Flynn, who's a former MEP, who actually he summed it up nicely for me. He said, "I'm not boycotting Twitter for 48 hours because I believe in free speech in nearly all circumstances, including to assist in holding those with dumb, obnoxious and hateful views up to proper scrutiny. I support the criminal law against incitement, but cancel culture is not for me." Isn't this just part of cancel culture, Karen?
It's a good question. I think that the people who set up this campaign, um, I think actually it's about sending a message. I don't think they're saying they're not going to go back to Twitter. I think that's the point. It's a 48-hour walkout to say it's a protest, really. Um, I've joined them, as have many others, really just to say we've had enough. I don't think this is about cancelling free speech. I think this is more about social media forums understanding they have to make a choice. Is it literally a free for all and anything goes? Or are there certain parameters around which that site operates? They apparently have policies about, if you shouldn't breach you shouldn't place abusive messages and things like that. But I mean, there's no point having a policy if you don't put it into action and it has consequences. You said yourself, I mean, the rant from Wiley on Twitter and also on Instagram. I mean, it was vicious and it was incitement. I mean, it was horrifying to watch. Um, but most of all, what was horrifying was the fact that it was just endless and it was still there hours later, I think nearly 48 hours later. So this is more of a protest rather than
Yeah.
suddenly saying nobody should have an opinion.
No, I understand that. Isn't it sort of still there, though, if you go to look for it? I was away on holiday. I didn't really register much of it. I didn't go to look for it because, frankly, I was on my holes. But there's an argument also where, I mean, look, if someone says something blatantly, obviously racist or homophobic, we I think most of us can see that and to say, that is unacceptable, or anything that's clearly against the law. So inciting violence, inciting hatred. However, the rules that Twitter has and the rules that a lot of people who are part of this Twitter boycott have, it's about sort of controlling hate speech and banning hate speech. The trouble is, who gets to decide? When it comes to our laws, at least that is accountable to us as voters, and Parliament is accountable to us when they make those laws. But when someone decides that, say, for instance, mentions on the show many times that something is transphobic, so I don't believe that a man becomes a woman simply by calling himself Karen. That itself is called transphobia, and I could therefore be taken off and suspended, or even have my accounts taken off completely, which has happened to a number of people for doing that by
Mm.
Twitter, because that's regarded as hate speech. When we say that someone should be taken off a social media platform, when we say that people should be blocked, we should take action against it, are we not in danger of basically setting ourselves up as judge and jury? I could read Wiley's tweets and go, I think this person is an anti-Semite, this person is racist, this person is unpleasant, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with this person, I can judge this person, I could hold them up for ridicule and contempt. But do they need to be banned?
I think that social media companies need to decide what they are for. Are they a forum that actually promotes and amplifies the values that they say they stand for? Are they representative of society? And I think you'd agree with me, Julia, that, the majority of British people are good, decent people. They're not racist. They're not
Yeah.
anti-Semitic. And, is that what these social media companies represent? If so, there does, I believe, need to be a framework. But what I should just say is, there are always going to be arguments around some points that some people might say this is an opinion and some things are nuanced or some things are I don't know, less easy to understand, and then there are some things that are just blatantly obviously racist, and not just racist, but they are incitement, and I think Wiley was a very good
But isn't
example
that then a
of
matter?
it.
That's a matter for the police to get involved. Then I mean, you ask what are social
Indeed,
media companies
indeed.
for? I'll tell you what they're for. They're for making money. Full stop. End of. Nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, well, look, I use Twitter and I use Instagram, and I enjoy using those forums for fun, for exchanging opinions, for sharing information. But if somebody, for example, it's when we talk, for example, about Holocaust denial, when somebody says the Holocaust didn't happen, that isn't an opinion. That is an absolute denial of
Oh,
fact.
but
And
I would defend their right to say that. If people want to be idiots and people want to be stupid, I mean,
yeah,
we can argue against it and explain why
yeah.
do we need to shut them down from saying it?
Well, so it all is about a context, isn't it? It's all about context. So I don't think I keep going back to Wiley because that's the trigger, but it isn't just about him, is the truth. The fact is that social media sites, and again, you'll know this because we've talked about this over the years, but over the past few years, when anti-Semitism felt even more rife on social media, with Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party and the sort of the diatribe that sort of came out on our social media sites was horrendous. And it was it was flooding, if you like, social media. And it gets to a point where you have to wonder where a line is drawn. And, I really do take the point about freedom of speech. And in a sense, it is a social media company's decision as to who they want to be and how they want to be. But we've got the online harms bill supposed to be. It should come in. I think it should get into the statute books as soon as possible, where there is a bit more of a framework where those responsible, i.e., social media companies and their executives, take responsibility and are liable for what is on their sites in the same way that any other forum that has material on their sites sits on it. I you know, it's really difficult because Wiley is the trigger. I don't believe that isn't about an opinion.
Okay.
You only need to watch one piece of footage from him, face to camera on Instagram, and know that is he is trying to egg people on and bait them to
Okay.
hate and potentially attack Jews.
Okay. Karen Pollock, thank you very much indeed for joining us, Chief Executive of the Holocaust